We are live.
We are live. Welcome, everyone, to the Ancestral Healing Center's Tuesday Cafe Chats. We are very happy to have you here, and I think I can speak for all of us that we're reeling a little bit off of the heels of our launch of our Ancestral Healing of Shame series that we just started. So we are going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but I'd like to welcome everyone to this hour, and it's going to be a really special hour together. So I'm going to give everybody out there in the ether a chance to turn off your phones and grab your journals and maybe grab a hot cup of something that you enjoy. And we're going to take a deep dive today, as we do every Tuesday, into the roots of who you are. And that's what we love, and that is what we're really passionate about here at the Ancestral Healing Center. So we're going to be exploring a lot of different topics today. Some of them are the ways that we work and convey this type of information. And we hope that you get a lot out of the hour. So before we get started, I'd like for Bernadette and Michael, you guys introduce yourselves.
I'm Bernadette Thompson. I am an intuitive ancestral healer. I come from a long background of looking at my ancestors and understanding how powerful their connection with us is. I have a background also in grief and trauma, and so those things together have brought me to the work that I do. I did go through an incredible experience myself with the loss of my husband that gave me some personal experience in this field, and so that's where I came in to this team.
Thanks, Bernadette. And if you want to know more about that story of Bernadette's, you need to check out her recently released book, Ancestral Whispers, which she's being a little bit coy about promoting, but Ruschelle and I won't be. As for myself, I came to this work, as many people do, out of necessity to deal with mental health difficulties that were arising in my life and turned out to have ancestral roots. So I specialize particularly in shame, a lot of work around inherited trauma, using genealogy to understand where these traumas come from, and other issues like imposter syndrome and toxic masculinity. And it is a great pleasure to be working with Bernadette and Ruschelle on all of these lovely topics.
And Michael also has published 2 books as well. One on intergenerational trauma and one on the impact of porn addiction, the roots of shame, of which are related, right? So thank you, Michael and Bernadette, for those contributions. And my name is Ruschelle Khanna. I came to this work, like Michael and Bernadette, out of necessity, but through a slightly different channel. I got really, really sick. I had Lyme disease, and I kind of refer to it as my Lyme awakening, because my experience there was what kind of brought my ancestors into my awareness. They showed up during that time in my life and were a pivotal part of my healing. And that is something that we will talk more about at the Ancestral Healing Center, is these different ways of interacting with ancestors. So we don't kind of ascribe to a specific way that people must interact with their ancestors. Everyone comes to this work in a slightly different perspective and experience. And I have written a book called Inherited Trauma and Family Wealth. I won't make Bernadette and Michael recite that back to you. And I'm also working on another book about our collective narrative, our collective stories, starting with Greek mythology and how those stories are passed down and impact us as well. So today we're going to be going over the core teachings that take place at the Ancestral Healing Center. We're going to be working through some reflective activities. Bernadette will be going through some meditations and visualizations with us. I'm sure Michael has some stories and anecdotes that he will be sharing as well. But before we do that, I would love for Bernadette and Michael, if you have had any feedback from the shame course that you'd like to share today. So let our viewers know how that's been going over there.
Yes, I had feedback from two participants. One said that it was really useful and they were keen for the next part of the 3-part series. And the other one is from somebody who's one of my inner circle, somebody I've known for quite some time and has quite a high level of discernment, and who I've spent quite a lot of time. What she really picked up on was the dynamic between the three of us, and she really liked the way that we were coming in from different perspectives on the same topic, and that it was the Trinity worked better than the synergy in the Trinity. There you go. There's a little soundbite for you. So that was good feedback.
Awesome. Bernadette, did you have any feedback?
I did not have any direct feedback, but the feeling of how it all came together was very strong. And I do want to share that we are actually live, and it is working now.
Oh, okay, good. We were having some technical difficulties, YouTube, so we didn't know if we were going to get this up and going today. We were recording anyway, but good to see everybody out there in YouTube land. If you do have questions or comments, please email, is it Bernadette at Ancestral Healing Center?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you have any questions for next week, because our comments are not up and running yet, please email Bernadette and she will record those and we will answer those questions next week as well. So, okay, great. And I want to read a couple of comments here from, so Jacob, who participated, said, this was an incredibly powerful session. Thank you for letting me participate. And I also have a friend that I would like to bring along for the next one. Cindy said it was a wonderful session today. I'm fascinated by the generational patterns that can be found when we just stop and look. So yeah, there's a couple others for us. So please join us. Again, reach out to Bernadette at ancestralhealingcenter.com if you'd like to pop into this intimate discussion. It is that is a kind of a private discussion that we're in, so we don't do those live on YouTube. Okay, anything else? Any other thoughts about that? Okay. So today, before we begin, every week we talk about things that can be energizing or possibly triggering, because Bernadette, Michael, and I do share from our clinical work, confidentially from our clinical work and from personal experience. And we have found, and we have done this long enough to know that when you are listening to stories of ancestral pain, sometimes pain arises in your own body. So if there's something that we say that you get angry about, or something that you say that we say that you get anxious about, or is upsetting or disturbing, please email us, reach out to us. We would love to continue the dialogue and offer you resources around how to slow down and process those. So if you have a journal, that would be super helpful for you to just kind of write down reactions that you might have to what we're talking about today. And on that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and he is going to do our first core teaching for the hour.
Thanks, Ruschelle. So here at one of the things we want to understand is exactly what is ancestral trauma. A lot of people come to these sessions and they may have little or no idea of it, or they may have formed some kind of idea of it, depending on their experience. So we just want to provide a framework of understanding of what this thing is before we then start going into it and breaking it down. So ancestral trauma is unresolved family patterns that have been acquired through genetic inheritance, and it manifests as disempowering or destructive beliefs, feelings, and behaviors that make no sense in the context of the life of the person experiencing them. And today I want to briefly go into the mechanics of ancestral trauma. So it was first identified in the 1960s through children of Holocaust survivors. And these children were behaving as if they themselves were suffering in the way that their parents were. And one of them commented that I'm wired for Auschwitz, but I live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And that comment just really shows us the disconnect between the pattern, the ancestral pattern, and who we are now. So ancestral patterns they're automatic responses to events that have long ago passed. So trauma occurs when a person experiences something they cannot process, and we can see that very clearly in the Holocaust situation. Our fight or flight response produces adrenaline that prompts us to action. However, when neither fight nor flight are available, as in the case of the Holocaust, we go into another set of actions, conveniently, that can also be reduced to words starting with the letter F: freeze and fawn. So when we can't fight or flight, we go into freeze or fawn, and this is a pure survival strategy. And what that means is that we're left with this situation of emotional overwhelm because we couldn't deal with the situation. And that emotional overwhelm gets stuck in our psyche, it gets stuck in our DNA, and then it gets passed on. And so physically it's stored as a chemical imbalance, which, as I say, can be passed down. And there is plenty of research now to validate that mechanism. Traumatized animals shake. Traumatized humans go into shock and denial. But trauma is energy, which obeys the law of conservation of energy. It cannot be created or destroyed, only transmitted or transmuted. So the work that we try to do here at the Ancestral Healing Center is teach you how to transmute these stuck patterns of energy so they are no longer transmitted. And so we teach you universal processes so you can recognize, understand, and release your unique experience of ancestral trauma. Healing trauma involves completing the original incomplete experience, and that caused overwhelm. And in next week's core teaching, we'll talk more about some of the sources of ancestral trauma.
Transmute the transmission. Michael, I love it. I love all of these quotes that kind of come out of this conversation. And before we got on the call today, I was thinking about how, I don't think we emphasize enough the transformation that people go through, the actual why of why we're doing this. And just all of these words this week have been coming up for me about that, about the freedom that people get from this work. And I think transmuting transmission fits perfectly with that. So with that, Bernadette, I know you are I'm going to turn it over to you for a new insight today.
Well, I want to make a little bit of comment about the transformation, because I know that when I was going through the loss of my husband and I was beginning to understand this connection I had with my ancestors, that deep understanding of what they have gone through absolutely helped me put into perspective what I was going through and helped me in that healing process. So I was going through trauma as he was so ill with alcoholism. So there was this understanding of the trauma I was experiencing. I could see how my ancestors had managed it as well. So it was huge, and it was a huge part of my transformation. So, but today's mini lesson, it's interesting. It is talking about healing, and it is talking about, the title of it is Fear of Betraying the Family by Healing. And I want to open with a question that many people feel, but they might not say out loud, which is, have you ever started to grow or change or begin the idea of healing and then suddenly feel a strange pull to stop. Not because the healing felt wrong, but because something inside whispered, like, is my family going to react to this? Or am I turning my back? Many people who begin healing work discover an unexpected emotion. The fear that becoming healthier, more aware, or more free somehow betrays the people who came before them and betrays their family. So we're going to talk about that today. We are often loyal to our family systems, and we have these invisible bonds of loyalty. And they're there, they have been there to help families survive, stay together, circle the wagons. And they sound like we don't talk about that. We stay strong. We keep our struggles private. We don't leave each other behind. And this is just how our family is. And so children absorb these messages very early. And belonging is the deepest survival instinct we have. So the idea that we would go outside what the family does, it doesn't feel good. And so the nervous system begins to learn, if I belong, I'm safe. But sometimes healing requires us questioning the patterns that have been present for generations. And when we do that, something inside may feel like we are breaking an agreement, which sounds strange, but you start to feel like they're not going to understand what I'm trying to do. And this fear can show up in subtle ways. So someone might begin therapy and suddenly feel guilt. Someone may set up a healthy boundary and feel like they're abandoning their parents. Someone may choose a different way of parenting and feel like they are silently criticizing the generation before them, which I think is very important. And the mind says, if I change, am I saying they were wrong? And if I heal, am I leaving them behind? And if I begin to live differently, am I rejecting my family and what came before me? But often the deeper truth is that healing does not reject our ancestors. It responds to their unfinished struggles. So in family systems work, there's a concept called invisible loyalty. We sometimes unconsciously repeat patterns because it keeps us emotionally connected to those who came before us. So, for example, if generations carried hardships, thriving may feel unsafe. And if suffering was normalized, then feeling joy may feel like betrayal. If silence protected the family, speaking openly may feel dangerous. So, and all of those things are keep us wondering that this healing that we are trying to do, it doesn't quite feel comfortable. So the nervous system may say, if I become different, I may lose my place. But belonging doesn't require a repetition of pain. And I see that in my own life as I began the path of healing when I was going through trauma. And family, while they honored it in a way, they didn't really understand the path that I chose and how I chose it. So people begin to look at you a little differently when they don't understand the path that you are on. But what if healing is not breaking away from our ancestors, but continuing their story in a new way? So most of our ancestors did not choose their suffering. They were responding to the world they lived in. And if they had access to the tools and the support and the awareness that we have now, many would have chosen healing too. So when someone in a family begins to heal, they are not abandoning the lineage. They are expanding it. What is possible, they are expanding what is possible within it. And healing doesn't erase the past. It allows the future to breathe. So I want you to think of that, about that, as just being here and listening to what we are sharing, that you are on a healing path. You are understanding that this knowledge that you are learning is helpful to understand who you are and some of the things that you have been passed down to you. So I just want you to reflect gently and know that if you are getting or feeling pushback as you begin your healing journey, that it doesn't mean that you are doing something wrong, but it just means the family has not understood that healing can actually change them.
Thank you, Bernadette. Michael, did you have any thoughts about?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that was
Go ahead.
great. And I've got 3 quick points I want to make. So the first one, Bernadette talks about that you start to go forward and then you feel a pull backwards. But that pull backward, that can happen unconsciously. There can be an unconscious no to this work. And that unconscious no is called denial. So a lot of people, the way to manage the pull towards healing and the dangers of healing that Bernadette explained really well is just by staying in denial, because then you don't have to deal with it. And the second point is about breaking. It feels like you're breaking an agreement with your family. And I think that's, again, a very, very powerful recognition. And particularly if you look at most marriage vows, they're very much around don't rock the boat. There's literally a, what's in the family stays in the family, encoded into those vows. And then that becomes the model to which the children are subjected, and then passes down. So there very much is an agreement to not rock the boat, and what's in the family stays in the family. And the third point is that starting on the healing journey is an invitation to your family to join you. And they do not have power of veto over your decision, but you are actually opening a door for them to step into should they choose to. Thank you.
I have a comment to what Michael just shared. And one of the things that came up as you were saying that, Michael, is, and it's what happened to me, it's kind of like, why are you bringing that up? Like when you, to bringing up what happened in the past and what our ancestors went through. And they just leave it like that's how they push back. So it's not like, why are you healing? It's kind of like, what are you talking about that for? We don't need to talk about that. So I just wanted to share that.
So I'm over here smiling because our family has a really funny story about denial, kind of a running story, which we have. My sister and I, we have an aunt, and she's up in her 80s and just lovely, lovely human. But it's clear that the coping strategy of choice, which we all have one, it's clear that the coping strategy of choice is denial, because there's never any problems. There's just didn't have any problems. But what she did have, like most older women of that generation in the South have, is a concrete goose that sits on your front porch. And I am going somewhere with this. So the goose gets dressed. Are you guys familiar with this cultural phenomenon? Okay. Well, so it's a goose called denial. Okay. So this is the plastic version, but our geese in the South are dressed. How do I do it? Okay, they're dressed for the season. And we always said, Nan, what's her name? Nan doesn't have any problems because she has a goose. And she just dresses that goose up and everything is fine. Christmas, 4th of July, prom, doesn't matter what comes along, the goose is dressed. So we don't have to take these things so seriously either. They are pretty heavy topics, but the reality is we all have ways of coping with stressful things, and denial is just another one of those things. It is a good thing to get past if you want to personally develop. So, and just to kind of wrap up what you were talking about, Bernadette, survival guilt is another term that is used for this, right? So you said invisible loyalty, that's one, and then survival guilt. And I wanted to make one other comment about people not understanding. The people in your life who don't understand your own growth, they are a reflection of the parts of you that are yet to catch up. So we can always use, if mom doesn't understand and cousin doesn't understand, we can always just extend a lot of grace to them internally and say, you know what, these are just reflections of the parts of me that haven't fully caught up with this yet. And we're all going to get there because we're all on our own journey and we're all going to get there. So, okay. Thank you, Bernadette. That was, I was just taking so many notes as you were talking. So I am doing second core teaching, which is every week here at the Cafe Chats, we go over the 4 pillars of how we work and what our course content is based off of. So I'm going to review those core pillars and then dive into one of them a little bit more deeply. Number 1, we want to know the science. We want to know how epigenetics and behavioral sciences and relational sciences interact so that we can provide the most up-to-date information for you. And one of the core knowings of the science is that the body knows before the mind does. So the body knows before the mind does. Our body is going to respond to the environment long before our conscious thoughts do. Number 2, we here at the Ancestral Healing Center, we want to understand family history and genealogy. So we place a lot of emphasis on the work of getting into your family narrative and understand using genealogy as a healing tool. We love, love, love genealogy, but we think that it is a means to an end. The story doesn't stop with the research. It goes on to the emotions connected to the research. And that's the depth at which we work. Number 3 is understanding shame. And that's why we have a whole course series on shame. I'm going to come back to that one today. But number 4 is understanding grief. So once we have understood that shame is at the core of our healing, then often that unlocks a lot of sadness and needs time for reconciliation. So understanding and processing grief is a core principle of what we do. But today, because, it was in the rotation that I talk about shame, and also we are in the midst of our core curriculum around shame, I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. Number 1, shame is a relational emotion. So shame doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in our interactions with people, places, and things. Shame signals danger to belonging, which explains why it often leads to things like withdrawal, defensiveness, or aggression. Number 2, shame narrows the attention and reduces flexibility. So when we are holding a lot of shame, we are really cutting ourselves off from the fullness of our lives. Research demonstrates that shame decreases cognitive flexibility. So we're not performing as well as we could anywhere in our lives if we're holding on to shame. And that's why we want to work so hard here to find its roots and unlock it so that you can live as freely as you possibly can. And number 3, shame is learned and reinforced across generations. So shame is the shutdown of our system that is a protective mechanism, and it causes us to, in one hand, stay safe, but again, withdrawal. These patterns, they become internalized, and they look like self-criticism, perfectionism, chronic self-monitoring, or the opposites of those. Sometimes shame can look like self-harming behaviors as well. So that is really what the month of March is all about here at the Ancestral Healing Center, is really getting a grasp on where shame might be hiding out in your life and cutting you off from some amazing experiences, growth, improved health, improved finances, improved relationships. So that is our core teaching for today. I think Bernadette might have something to follow that up. Is that
Can
right?
I just make a quick comment?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Comments. Yes, absolutely.
On the core teaching on shame. So as Ruschelle says, shame is always relational. So it's always experienced in relation to others. But shame is also always judgmental. So underlying all shame, there is always an implicit judgment against a perceived status that we don't measure up to. And so when you're working with shame, to start to unpick it, you can ask the question, who am I experiencing shame in relation to? And what perceived status am I experiencing shame in relation to? And if you, I was going to say triangulate those 2 points, but biangulate them, you will get a pretty good read on what the underlying issue is.
I really appreciate that, Michael, that we need to look at who is the shame in relation to, because it's telling us something about who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, it's not random. It's never random.
Okay. It's directing us back to our identity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those who are that we experience the shame in relation to are mirroring the piece of us that is experiencing the unconscious judgment and failing it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say that again? Say it again.
So those who we're in relation with, who are making us feel ashamed of ourselves, they are mirroring the piece of ourselves where we are judging ourselves and feeling that we're not good enough.
We can only, is what I'm hearing you say, Michael, is that shame requires a buy-in. And if I don't buy into that, like,
yes,
shouldn't you be ashamed of yourself? You're so short. I'm really short, right? And if I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Yes.
Okay, then I'm not taking that in. But shouldn't you be ashamed of yourself? You didn't get your PhD. Okay, well, maybe there's a sliver of I didn't accomplish.
But that could depending if you were raised in an environment where it was pounded into you that was what was supposed to happen, then that's a whole different thing from an environment where you are who you are and it's about encouraging you to be who you are, whatever that is. It's a different, yeah.
So where I'm lacking, am I buying in to that? Bernadette, any thoughts about that?
No, I mean, it just goes back. I mean, it makes me think of my daughter, and we've talked about this before, who, she said to me as an adult, that she felt so much shame because she was so different, that when she just saw it as like a stadium full of people, and each one of those moments was a time that somebody was looking at her saying, no, this isn't, you should be ashamed, you're not acting right. And and just how powerful it is. I think that's the biggest thing, is just how powerful the shame can be. But when we talk about it and break it down a little bit, in our conversations, we begin to see that it can lose its power, or not be there.
That's a really good point too, Bernadette, is that shining a light on it
Mm-hmm.
breaks it down. It's not that powerful after all.
Right.
Well, I think that's probably, I know, Bernadette, you're going to do an exercise with us, but I'm assuming it's going to have something to do in that direction, right? Shining a light on something.
We are. I like the way that we've been using this as a meditation. It may change over time, but it is a way for us to process all the things that we've heard during this, and just to think about it a little bit. So this is a short little meditation that I will share. And it's honoring the lineage while healing. So let's all just settle a little bit and place our feet on the floor. Take in a slow breath. Just kind of relax for a moment. And again, inhale and exhale. So now imagine yourself where you are in the present moment. But behind you, imagine a long line of ancestors stretching back through time. You may not see them clearly, so you don't need to see faces. You just sense the presence of many lives that came before yours. Each one carries struggles, choices, pressures, dreams that were fulfilled, and dreams that were not. Now take a breath. And now imagine turning gently towards that line, that lineage, and say silently, I belong to you. And then say, and I am allowed to grow. Feel those two truths together. You belong, and you are allowed to become something new. And imagine the line of ancestors behind you, not pulling you backward, but standing as witnesses. Some may not understand. Some may be curious. Some may even feel relieved. Take another breath. Now silently say, I carry your strength, and I release what no longer needs to continue. Feel your feet on the ground again. You are standing at the living edge of your family story. Take one final breath in and slowly release it. And when you are ready, you may come back. Healing does not remove you from your lineage. it allows the lineage to evolve through you.
Thank you, Bernadette. So, Michael, did you have any questions from participants today, or any questions that were on your mind that we can answer?
Oh, yeah, I've got a question on my
Oh,
mind.
lots
Yes,
of
I
questions.
definitely do. This question has not been asked before.
Okay.
So this is a question about concrete geese. Okay, so my observation of our individual patterns and collectively our social patterns is that they are never random. They always serve some kind of emotional purpose. Ruschelle knows where this is going. So they're containers for something. They are coping mechanisms. They are compensations. They're projections. Do you have any idea on how this concrete goose in the south, dressed concrete goose thing, emerged, and what role, emotional role, it might be playing?
Michael, I have no idea. And now I want to do a full-on research project on the goose. Because yes, women across the South dress up their concrete geese. This is definitely a thing. Let me just ask ChatGPT really quick while we're here.
Yeah, you do that, because and if you look at a lot of folklore, a lot of folk pageants, folk rituals, there's always some kind of emotional thing behind it, even if it's some form of superstition.
Yeah.
It's coming from somewhere and it's trying to do something. There is a logic to it, even though it may look completely superstitious. Bernadette, yes?
What I get from it, and I feel this kind of strongly, is that it is like, I'm just turning my back on this. I've got a job to do. I'm going out to take care of making sure, like it's putting this is putting a fake front out there. And that it is, there's trouble in the back. I'm just closing that door, and everybody's going to see this beautiful goose dressed up to the, and I'm sure there's competition between how the goose is dressed up.
Do you think it's a symbol of belonging?
I don't know that I think it's a symbol of belonging. I think it's a symbol of denial. It's a symbol of I'm denying what's going on here, and I'm just going to dress everything else up to make it look pretty, so that people don't see what's in the back.
But when it becomes collective, there must be something that others are buying into. Again, buy-in. We need to do an episode on buy-in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some reason why that's been picked up on as something that you do.
Okay, so guys, I have a history of the goose, and then we can expand on it in terms of like analyzing the goose. Okay, so post-war lawn ornaments, after World War II, more people moved to the suburbs, but they wanted their lawns to mimic estates. So concrete animals, including deer, frogs, saints, and geese, were soon mass produced so that it was a status symbol. So that was the beginning, right? So we want to fit in with the upper class. And then in the 70s and 80s, that was how chat refers to it as the rise of the porch goose. Concrete geese statues were given Santa outfits, raincoats, sports jerseys, Halloween costumes. It became a folk craft tradition in the 70s, that's something where women could show off their skill. It also became a visual calendar for the neighborhood, and it brought out humor in neighborhoods. So that's kind of the surface level, but I mean, we always saw it as a symbol of denial. I mean,
as a status symbol, that is a symbol of denial.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's also, brings in the shame, because for the neighbor that isn't doing it, there's this shame on you. You don't have this out there. There's a little bit of that goes along with
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you can see how shame becomes a collective construct.
Yeah. I think playing around with the light and dark of all of this is something that we can all do a little bit more of. I spoke with a woman yesterday who had done some family constellations work. And in our conversation, we both said, I'd really like to think of my ancestors as I'm living the best parts of them. And that just kind of came out of our conversation. So, look, I was happy. I was happy to get the goose. I wasn't ashamed of it. I was like, well, gee, finally I've been initiated. I finally got one. So, these connections are both happy and challenging.
But again, transmit or transmute.
Right. Are you transmitting
Are you transmitting the goose as denial, or are you transmuting the goose to say, I've seen through the game and now I'm playing same goose, different game?
Same goose, different game.
This is all ending up in the Substack, folks.
How many times this goose pops into my therapy sessions? So if I notice denial, I'll go like this. So yeah. My husband's like, how do you even still have a job? Like, this stuff is ridiculous. So, anyway, okay, a great question, Michael. Any other questions as we?
Yeah, I've got a question, and this one is picking up on Bernadette's insight for the week about family betrayal, and this is a question about how do you work with family betrayal. So this could be whether you're working with it personally, or how do you help others to work with it. Bernadette, do you want to lead off on that?
So do you mean family betrayal, like in they turn their backs on you kind of betrayal, or like in the case of, or in what context do you mean family betrayal?
Well, I think it could be that internal feeling of betrayal, or it could be that you start on the healing journey and you encounter that the family is feeling that you're betraying them.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
And, if I use myself as an example, it really is this idea that you kind of what was brought into what we were taught as children is like, we're kind of a perfect family. That we're this great big Irish Catholic family. We're a perfect family. It was 4 boys and 4 girls. There was and so because of that, you didn't want to talk. There was no bringing anything dark or anything controversial, family controversy, or even looking back. It was all about, how about them Jets, and whatever else was we were, or the Patriots, and it was really very surface. And so when I started to do some healing work, when I really started, and when I was writing my book and telling the story of this imperfect story that I had, it was like they didn't, it was hard for them to see, and because it's easier to not do it. It's easier to stay in the lane of the goose. And that's going to be our from now on. Does that make any sense?
Cooking the goose of denial.
Yeah. But it's true. That's where, and you feel it in that. So when I would try and talk to somebody and just talk about things, it would just be like, oh, so how are the kids? And no deeper than, no, how are you? What's going on? So that's kind of where, and it's just, we were all taught that. So it's, I don't want to put blame. It was kind of the family system, and I stepped out of it in that way.
I remember when I used to talk to my father, he used to say, what's new? And I never thought anything of it. And of course, when I look back on it now, I can see that both the past and the present were uncomfortable places. So there was an always living in this displaced new that never delivered. And again, I had a friend who was who was really het up on people asking you how you were when they really had no interest in how you were. Because, if you said, well, actually, I had a really rough day, then they'd, feel that they were somehow responsible for dealing with it. And so when people used to ask him and said, how are you? He used to say, mediocre, but thanks for asking, just as a way of jolting them out of the unconsciousness, the complacency of it. And of course, that was, some people would laugh, but people found that uncomfortable.
Mm.
Ruschelle, any comment from you?
No, guys. I think I'm still just reeling in my own brain about trying to figure out the history of the goose. So
we haven't heard the last of this, folks.
No, we haven't. So thank you guys again for a really meaningful conversation. No, it is.
I mean, who said inherited trauma was dull?
Yeah, exactly.
No, guys, not dull at all. The more I think we interact with the material, the more I think their presence and their influence comes to life, and you can really interact with it more and use it as a way to better yourself. And so, I think.
But I also think that it's in these tiny details that it helps people to recognize it in their own lives. If you talk at an abstract academic level, you understand it at that level, but it doesn't really register. And if you talk about extreme forms of trauma that have happened, again, it's difficult to relate to them. And when you start talking about the concrete goose, and if you're in that culture, and you're never going to look at your concrete goose the same again.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reasons why we do certain things, and I think that comes back to the point, the beginning conversation, which is, I don't want to leave my family behind. Does healing mean I have to leave my family? Absolutely not. Go ahead and get yourself a goose and do the things that your family does and that you love to do with them, and make them bigger and brighter and more fun.
Mm-hmm.
So
But it's consciously knowing that it's there, not as a stand-in for something that's being hidden, and it's
Right.
an expression of you having fun with it, and belonging.
Absolutely.
And because we don't want to stay in that heaviness. The whole idea of uncovering and looking back is to allow ourselves to not have to stay in that unknown, what's this heaviness? So the goose was a great topic.
Awesome. Okay. So we do want to invite people again. We're looking for beta testers for our shame course. We have 2 more weeks. It is Saturday, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard, and 5 p.m. 4 now. 4
because of the daylight saving.
Yeah, 4 p.m. UK. And if you are interested in that, please email Bernadette at ancestralhealingcenter.com. And we'd love to have you kind of pop in and listen to the content and then give us some feedback. And other than that, we hope you guys have a really good week. Anything else, Bernadette, Michael, before we wrap up?
No, we need to get off this thing so we can get on to
okay. All right.
On to Claude to see what Claude has to tell us
Claude
about,
and ask about the goose.
concrete.
But also, if you want to do deeper work and you're ready to jump in right now, if you go to ancestralhealingcenter.com, you can find out how to work with Bernadette and Michael individually, and please do that. They're incredible resources. So otherwise, have a really good week, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.